And the key thing is we label everything in points, not dollars, because people have points loaded on their membership card and they're able to select items. And the fresh, healthier items cost fewer points. So we get that incentive of a bunch of cauliflower or broccoli is going to be 1 point. The Tostitos in back might be 5 points. So we have full availability, but that community commitment, we can be the healthier half. That's what we're really driving towards.
Good morning, Scott. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, Phil. Good to see you.
Yeah. So Scott is with Community Action House here in Holland, and I've been involved a little bit with Community Action House, but very glad to have you on, Scott, and talk more about your mission there.
Yeah.
And so thanks for taking the invitation.
Yeah, I'm honored to be asked. You've been a longstanding partner of our mission, and I know doing a lot of other good work out in the community with many of our peers and partners. And I'm always happy to chat about what we're seeing, what we're doing as a part of our community's expression of compassion, but also a creative service in pursuit of a stronger community for all.
So unfortunately, neither one of us have 2 or 3 hours to talk about all the work that Community Action House does, but can you summarize what Community Action House is and the work that you do?
Absolutely. So Community Action House, I'd like to start with some of that founding story. Back in 1969, a group of neighbors, group of churches, group of community leaders came together to create one common space where we would help neighbors with unmet needs. So that's a long way of saying we are a locally founded community institution serving neighbors with unmet needs in Ottawa and Allegan counties. So for 57 years, we've grown and shifted and changed, but always in a pursuit of our mission to make sure nobody in our community is stuck facing challenges alone and everyone can access what they need to thrive. And so right now we do that in a number of different ways. We organize the time and talent and compassion of over 3,000 annual volunteers with dozens of staff members and loads of other partners to meet neighbors who are in need of additional food assistance. So we have got one set of programs and we call work to find the nourishment that some of our neighbors need but otherwise go without when they're living in food insecurity. We've got another set of programs that work with people to equip them to find stability, that next right step into stable housing, or it might be that lower cost childcare placement. So equipping them to access resources that they need a little extra support to identify, to step into, and then to empower. Right? And so we have a financial wellness team that works with people to sharpen skills and set goals and move forward, whether it's through financial capabilities classes, credit building pathways, or even programs where our graduates end up purchasing their first homes, which is directly in your trade. And just last month, I heard about 2 of our program graduates buying their first home, and those are big success stories that we really celebrate. So it's everything from those critical needs to not enough food in my fridge today to longer term progress building through that skill building set of our programs.
Very cool. You said the word graduate. Tell me what that means.
Gotcha. When I say graduate, I mean they've completed a certain number of coursework hours with our team, and some of our financial wellness team are certified housing counselors, and they're able to work with people through different courses. They might be group classes, they might be individual counseling sessions, and they'll go through different parts of shaping their own financial understanding, their own financial planning, going through the different aspects of considering home ownership for that particular step. And when they've completed the different modules of that, they can be certified for different programs that might support their journey to home ownership.
Okay. All right. How many graduates have you had?
You do catch me off guard. I don't have those stats on hand, but I can say we had over 400 neighbors' families moved through our financial wellness curriculum over the last year, working with whether it's group course or individual counseling. And now there's different expressions of that. And so not every one of those has a certificate graduation. Sometimes it's I'm meeting with somebody once a week on a foreclosure intervention strategy. I believe we helped over 40 families last year address a very big financial challenge and family challenge for themselves and how they might approach a potential or impending foreclosure. And so working with them to understand different options and being shoulder to shoulder with them in that challenge. So part of that, living out the expression of no one faces challenges alone. Our team has been through that a number of times. For most families that might get a letter or a concern show up in that space, it's probably their first time. So we're there with them to say, hey, here's how this can move. Here's what we might be able to do about it. And again, over 400 different folks been through different parts of that. Homeownership is just one of those pathways, and families want to move on that next right step for them.
That's great. So let's back up a little bit. What led you into leadership at Community Action House?
I've had the fortune for the last 15 to 20 years to have been in nonprofit leadership, but that has been a journey. When I finished at Hope College back in 2001, I finished with a business degree. It was business, econ, communications, and started really briefly in the private sector, in business. But I continued to evaluate like how I am using those skills and really to assess, and I was challenged by one of my profs in my senior year, and it's Buchner, if any of us read him, right? What can we find when the world's deep need and our deep gladness meet? And so another way of saying, look for that Venn diagram, but for what is felt purpose for us, and for each of us it's different, but like a particular need, a particular set of skills, but also what we have a passion to do day in and day out. And for me, the fuel was elsewhere. And so I found my way into the nonprofit space. So I shifted. But as a part of that journey, for a while, I thought I might be in direct service myself. But I learned like an organization is an organization. Now, we do different things. We produce different sort of results. But I realized through volunteering and then my early stage career in some nonprofit space that general management, financial management, strategy, organizational development, and leadership, same thing that I had been trained to do and seen my dad do in the corporate sector, that's also needed in the nonprofit space because that can empower the frontline teams to be doing that critical work, welcoming and serving neighbors with unmet needs, regardless of the sector we are working in. So that's how I found my way there. I ended up going to business school. I have an MBA. There's a concentration in nonprofit leadership. But that really said, like, an organization is an organization. We just have to decide how we coordinate the activities of many different humans and resources to achieve the missional objectives we have. And so we have particular missional objectives here at Community Action House. In the past, I've done that work internationally. I left West Michigan for a while. I lived and worked in East Africa and Kenya. I had the opportunity to shift into a headquarters role in Washington, D.C. for an international nonprofit. And then, like many of us out here, had a couple young kids and also was thinking about like where they're going to grow up. Are they going to know their cousins well enough? Are they going to know their aunts and uncles and grandparents well enough, or just on vacation? And so I had the opportunity and the blessing and fortune to find what I consider deeply mission-aligned work in the nonprofit sector with an organization that I had long respected from being here in West Michigan. The executive leadership role at Community Action House came available. I applied, and I was fortunate enough to be offered the position back in 2018. And since then, it's been 7 amazing years of my kids being closer to family, me living just down the street from Hope College, where I wasn't sure I'd be back down the street when I graduated in 2001, but here I am, and I love it. Living and working and serving in the same community is a true pleasure, and I love being back here.
That's awesome. That's a great story. So now that you're leading the organization, and I know you said I think the number was 3,000 volunteers or something like that, which I believe when I've attended the volunteer bash and the barn is filled, it's amazing how many people are there. But how many paid staff do you have? You have quite an organization there.
We do. So we're about 80 staff right now. Now, some of those are part-time, some of them are interns, but we're 80 staff. And last year we broke 3,000 volunteers for the first time. Some of those will come once. Many of them come monthly or quarterly as a part of a team or a church group or a civic group, or even people come in with their families. We've got some volunteers who show up for their first time and they get involved in some of the straightforward but meaningful work of like, how do we sort food and get it on shelves to get it to people? We got volunteers that drive trucks or shift food in their minivans. And we have also volunteers that go to particular trainings to learn different skills. Like on our guest services team, they're often the first point of contact when a guest comes to us or a neighbor comes to us in a time of crisis and doesn't know where to turn. So those things take more training, and we kind of call some of those positions almost volunteer staff. They're doing the work shoulder to shoulder with our team and stuff that otherwise we'd have a paid staff doing. And it's this labor of love that our volunteers do is really amazing.
I'm a little biased because I served on the transportation team there for a little bit as a volunteer. So lots of great people there, but I have a soft spot for the transportation team.
Absolutely. We'll move over 4 million pounds of food in a year, and that's a lot of
Yeah,
transportation. And you probably pulled a
yeah,
lot of pallets full of food off the back of the truck. And you know that all the hands and all the hours it takes to do this sort of work with care, but also at scale, at the scale our
yeah.
community needs. It's really substantial, and it's a privilege to be a part of it. And so thank you for being a part of it, Phil.
Oh no, it's my pleasure. So I too was familiar with Community Action House from a distance for many years. And then a friend and neighbor of ours put some very light pressure on my wife and I to get more involved, and it worked out, and it was great, and glad to still be involved. How do people find you? Are other nonprofits referring to you? Are the schools involved? How do people find you?
So when we're talking about volunteers, your story is very common, right? Somebody says, you know what, these people, they're doing good work and they need an extra help. And so volunteers bring friends, families, others, and that's how a network of community compassion grows, and it's encouraging. We're talking about neighbors in need to one degree, not that different. When people are networked and saying, I'm struggling with this, if they're talking to people at their church, if they're talking to people in their community or down the street, we've been here for 57 years, so folks that have different needs often would know somebody else that's, hey, you should go check them out. But we also have formal partnerships. Dozens of churches support us, corporate partners, and then we've got formal partnerships with a lot of different nonprofit peers where we make sure they know our different programs and opportunities. It's a long way of saying there's no wrong door to our service. We keep a list of our activities and our opportunities for support on our website, so that can be found. We're active on social media as well for those neighbors. But a lot come through those referral pathways with our partners out there in the community. And then also, once somebody's in our kind of care continuum, if they're coming to us for a month of food support at Food Club, we'd call them a Food Club member, their neighbors or somebody else they know, they become the advocate to say, hey, there's this thing that's been really helpful to me. Maybe it'd be helpful to you as well. So you have that word of mouth thing that is really meaningful because people trust people they know. And they trust them, especially when they're able to share, you know what, I fell in hard times and I really appreciated how I was treated. I really appreciated the support I got, but also the opportunity that was provided. And so when they share in that way, that's some of the best referral, where I'm sure in your business, it's the same. The word of mouth referrals for go there. I trust them to deal with my challenge, and I trust them to see me as a whole human and to value me for who I am as we try to find that next right step together.
So the dignity that the food club provides to food club members is amazing to me. I every time I walk in, of course, being an old guy, I remember as a kid driving my bike to Ife's to get a donut and or some candy or an errand for mom. And now you're in that space, and the food club is just amazing.
Before we continue, I'd like to give a big shout out to our amazing sponsors for making this podcast possible. Lighthouse Title, Independent Bank, Josh DeVries Mortgage Lender, Cooper Insurance, Jose Morales, in partnership with Fremont Mutual Insurance. Thank you for your support. Check out their info in the description below. Let's dive back in.
Can you speak about that a little bit in terms of how that works and what it costs to be a member and that sort of thing?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you know of the legacy of one of the buildings we're in. So our food club and opportunity hub, I'll share about, but for the listeners out there, as a long-term Holland Zealand area institution, we've been able to kind of acquire and revitalize a former neighborhood supermarket that was called Ife's Discount Food Farm. It was a neighborhood supermarket in Holland Heights that in the early 80s had closed down, had a second life as something else with Semco storing things. But then we revitalized it. And since we're in the food space, we were able to restore it as what looks and feels like a neighborhood grocery store again, with other resources there on site. So when I say food club and opportunity hub, there's also a bit of this reestablishing a space where we've had donors or volunteers say, I used to pick up my paper route from in front of Ife's, or I used to shop Phil at Ife's. So it's restoring some of that community space in the heart of the neighborhood. It is cool. Yeah. So our food club approach is actually a very innovative approach to food access. We made this big big change in 2021 to shift from a more traditional emergency food pantry setup, which usually looks like people come maybe once a month. Largely what they're able to take is going to fit in a box, and there's a high proportion of shelf-stable essentials, hence the name food pantry. It's what might go in your pantry. And we saw that with emergency food, there was a lot of the fresh and healthier food that was still not accessible to these families. And we also noted that there were a lot of families, both fixed income seniors or older adult families, as well as others, that had a meaningful income source, but that just wasn't enough to cover the cost of essentials. So we shifted what we did to try to have a different model that both had a higher dignity, higher choice interface and looked and felt like a supermarket, but also prioritized the healthier half of their monthly food budget, as we say. And so a lot of the food that you'd see in this small format food club, looks like a grocery store, is there's healthy, fresh items on our shelves every day. What guests do when they come to us is we'll go through their income. They have to be below a certain level and show that struggle or that unmet needs is living. And then there's a small sliding scale fee. That's a membership fee that gets them a membership card and access to a number of services. It might be $12, it might be $15, it might be $19, depending on what they earn. But then they get a membership card. And so there's participation in that membership, and we load points on that based on how big their family is. Because a bigger family is going to need more food in their fridge and on their shelves. And then they're able to take that card and for the next 30 days, shop and spend those points. Just like if they were at a normal grocery store, they could come in the evening after work on a Tuesday, they could come on a Saturday, they can come during the day on Friday. 6 days a week we're open, and they can walk in with their kids, and the shelves are full of fresh produce and fresh items. We've got dairy, eggs, meat, all of the perishable and the healthy food options for all of the food groups. And the key thing is we label everything in points, not dollars, because people have points loaded on their membership card, and they're able to select items. And the fresh, healthier items cost fewer points. So we get that incentive of a bunch of cauliflower or broccoli is going to be 1 point. The Tostitos in back might be 5 points. So we have full availability, but that community commitment, we can be the healthier half. That's what we're really driving towards. And that's where we've seen some incredible outcomes of people with nutritionally relevant health conditions, struggling with, early kidney disease or prediabetes or diabetes, but also being very low income and struggling to afford the healthy food that their physician or their care team is recommending for them. And we've had all sorts of success stories of people showing like, this has changed how I eat. This has changed my health. This has changed my day-to-day for me, for my kids, whatever that case is. And that's people taking ownership of living a healthier life because we as a community are removing that barrier of time and cost to access some of the fresher, healthier food items. And it's just so encouraging every day at Food Club to see those stories of transformation start to develop.
Having been in the food club many times, and again, as my time helping on the transportation team, that I was always amazed at the partnerships with local vendors, I'll call them, that provide that fresh vegetables, that fresh fruit, the meats. It was always just incredible to load that truck up with that much stuff. It was awesome.
It is an incredibly large community-wide effort of each person, each entity doing their own piece of it, and it being coordinated in the middle with whether it's our larger supermarkets or some of our restaurants or farmers markets or egg growers or orchards or meat packers. Each, when they have access, when they have the opportunity to give in different ways, and our volunteer team, our job is like, how do we make that really easy? So if they say, you know what, we have a lot of eggs right now because we have new hens and they're not the right size for the market, how do we make donating those easy? We got volunteers that can pick them up. We can repack them into containers because they're wholesome and they're healthy. They're just not yet fit for market. And we can include that across the system. We want to make donating easy for all of the fresh, wholesome food that otherwise might end up discarded or not fulfilling its highest purpose of helping nourish neighbors that we all care about. And so it's a really cool thing to see that volume of food that comes in with our volunteers and our drivers, and then other volunteers sorting it and getting to our shelves that very day so that neighbors that are qualified for Food Club can walk in and see fresh, abundant shelves that they and their kids can choose from, because that choice matters, that felt abundance and that felt opportunity shows them that their community is really in their corner. And in our community, like, no good food should go to waste while anyone's in need of fresh, healthy food in their fridge. And that's a really cool thing that our community does well when we show up together through Community Action House.
So if a local business is listening to this, watching this, and they say, wow, I didn't know, how would they connect with you to get those eggs or that bread or the vegetables to you?
Yeah, so it'd be jump on our website. If it's a business saying, how do we partner? Jump on our website at communityactionhouse.org. You could also just email us to hello@communityactionhouse.org, and our team will get in touch and we'll talk about where your interests and how you might engage can be and find the right landing zone. If you know you're a food partner and you're like, hey, sometimes we do have extra food, how might we give it? How can you make that easy? You can go to our Lakeshore Food Rescue page on our website. There's also a direct link at lakeshorefoodrescue.org. And there's a sign-up form to get more information, and our team would reach out to you. And our job is to, how do we make donating easy and rewarding? Because we want to be that community that minimizes food waste and maximizes community benefit. And we can do that with any partner that's stepping up in that food space. But also, if other corporate partners or other individuals or churches are curious about how might I get involved with a small volunteer group, we've got some families or some churches that adopt a shift once a month at Food Club, and it's their expression of service. And they get to know the neighbors over time as they come regularly. So all of those pathways can be found on our website, including the volunteer pathways for groups or individuals.
Okay, that's great to know. What is the biggest need for Community Action House right now?
That's hard. And I would say, I don't like the biggest question, like, we have a number of opportunities to enhance what we do with our neighbors. Right now, we're in a season of uncertainty. For many of our neighbors, there's a lot of systems and care supports that they rely on are shifting. You might have heard like changes to SNAP benefits, upcoming changes to Medicaid. A lot of these supports that some of our lower income neighbors count on are in a shifting system. So we're trying to make sure that we're there. We can show up consistently for them, but we're also shifting resources to work with those neighbors to help them understand those changes so that when those systems shift, no one that still qualifies falls through cracks. We want to make sure everyone maintains the coverage that they need, whether for their nutrition or their health and wellness. That really matters. And we've had other system shifting. Funding systems are shifting. And so we're responding to that by saying, hey, consistent volunteerism matters. Consistent care for our mission through financial donations really matters, as we've had to step into purchasing some more food as some of the other government systems have wound down in different ways over the last year. We're relying more heavily on our community in that space. And a big way we're doing that right now is we're preparing to open our Northside Resale Store. So one of our big areas of how do we sustain our mission. One is like annual community philanthropy, and another one is mission-aligned earned income, where we've had a resale store which turns donated furniture and clothing and volunteer hours into mission dollars to support our work. That's been really meaningful for us for the last dozen years. And so we've worked hard to plan a North Holland resale store, which is opening up at 650 Riley Street, across from Family Fair, near the Northside Boys and Girls Club. And another way people can show up is donate us extra furniture, some household goods, lightly used clothing that might have a value. Donate it there. We can turn that into mission dollars, but also shop if you like thrifting. That keeps us going. And if you want early insight on the shopping, volunteer there with us too. And we can turn that volunteer time into mission dollars. So all this is, how do we sustain this presence, this consistent presence that I know our neighbors need, as like costs are increasing in those essentials, systems are shifting. So our duty is, how are we best positioning ourselves to be that consistent community presence so that nobody has to face those challenges alone, those shifting systems alone, so we can be there to help them navigate those changes to achieve stability and long-term success. That's our mission. That's our calling.
So you beat me to it, Scott, and I'm glad you did, because I was going to ask you, you have some exciting things coming up with the resale store, and there we got there. So that's awesome. And that's opening soon, right?
Yeah, actually. So we soft open just on Tuesday, and people are already there shopping. And so we are having a grand opening celebration with further expanded hours. We're having a narrower soft open Monday through Friday over the next couple weeks. So you can shop there right now. You can donate there right now. But we are having a big grand opening weekend starting on April 17th. And there's going to be a ribbon cutting right at 10 a.m. when we open, and then there's going to be specials and some giveaways and those things during our grand opening weekend and week. And so a lot of attention and a lot of work there, which is going to be really exciting. So stay tuned for more information, but also if you want to thrift right now, get on over there and say hi to the team and volunteers that have been filling the racks and getting that store ready for mission service.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm sure, and I apologize again, we don't have 3 hours, and I could easily talk with you for that long, but just, is there any other, I know there is, I'm just not sure how much you can reveal. There's all kinds of exciting things going on at Community Action Now. Is there anything that you can tell us today that we should be aware of?
I'd love to tell you, two more things. Again, we can talk hours, Phil, and let's see, next time I see you over here, let's keep doing that. But yeah, one is, those of you might be aware that when we moved over here to open our food club in 2021, we had another property on 14th Street and Collin Park Drive, and our goal was to use that, which our community had gifted to our mission, for another mission purpose. And something our community really needs is affordable rental housing, right? And so we right now, in December last year, we finally broke ground after years of planning with different partners on a 2-site mixed income affordable housing project that's going to bring 52 units of mixed income affordable housing to our community. Right now that's under construction. By early 2027, those buildings will be open and families and neighbors will start living in those buildings. And that's going to be a really cool thing. So I've been loving seeing those walls come up. So if you've gone by Pine and 10th near Hope Church, one of our partners, that's one of the sites. They've been great in that. And the City of Holland is another partner with Dwelling Place in the lead on this construction. So 14th Street and Collin Park Drive, you might see those walls start coming up. Every time I drive by, I'm feeling good because I'm looking towards the future and knowing that at least for those 50 neighbors and families, they're going to find a more affordable place to call home right here in our community. And that's a really big deal right now with the pressure that is still exists in our housing market. Another thing that I would share about, I was sharing about kind of this innovative approach to food access, that is Food Club. There's been, since we opened, there are also 2 other food clubs, one in Grand Rapids, one in Ludington. We've been working with those 2, and so the 3 of us together, to respond to queries and questions from other communities that are considering launching food clubs of their own. We've done that to communities across Michigan, also across the country, and some international calls we fielded. But because of all that interest and other communities have begun the planning process of theirs, we have recently launched something called the Food Club Network to make sure that we can stay focused on our 2 counties of service, Ottawa and Allegan. But we just hired a founding executive director of what we call the Food Club Network, which is a separate entity with separate funding to support all of those other emerging food clubs and to help coordinate the activities of each food club to establish stronger partnerships in the healthcare area, to establish stronger statewide partnerships in the food procurement space, all to get best value for each of those communities. So soon there's going to be another food club launched in Saginaw. They've been working at it for a while, but I know the Food Club Network is something that I'm really excited about because I can see that as a point of leverage for what our community is doing well, while also connecting and sharing this expertise with many other communities who are fascinated and want to also step up what they're able to do in the food assistance and nutrition assistance space.
That's great. You are the model. That's awesome. I love that. I love that. So as we wrap up, Scott, where can people find you, find more information about Community Action House, maybe a website, some phone numbers or something? I know you mentioned some earlier.
Yep. CommunityActionHouse.org is the place to go to find us. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn by searching for Community Action House. We share stories of impact, stories of volunteerism, and stories of what our community chooses to do together on all of those channels. And I encourage you to follow us, share, and invite others in, because as a community-funded nonprofit, we are what our community chooses to do together, and the community needs to make that choice every single year. And so thanks for considering. If you haven't joined, come by for a tour. If you haven't volunteered, consider taking a shift and learning how to row together as a part of this community-facing and community-serving work.
Please do me a favor and thank your staff and the volunteers for everything that they're doing. I appreciate it. You've made a wonderful impact on the community. And thanks so much for your time today, Scott, and best wishes going forward.
Thanks so much, Phil. We really appreciate you. Thanks for caring for community and for being such an ally and partner.
Thank you. We'll talk soon, Scott.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Keys to the Community. Make sure you subscribe and stay connected to what's happening across West Michigan. And if real estate is on your mind, reach out. I'd love to help.